Hello, and welcome back to another special research radio program that focuses on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and his mission of achieving liberty, equality, and fraternity. I'm Abhishek, and in this week's episode, we'll discuss Dr. Ambedkar's approach towards countering patriarchy and casteism. Specifically, we'll examine legislations such as the Hindu Code Bill, spearheaded by Ambedkar, the need for specific clauses that take caste into account for all laws, and the role of upper caste women in the national women's movement. My guest today is Abhinaya Ramesh, who's a political scientist, feminist theorist, and human rights scholar. She was awarded the British Chevening Fellowship and is currently based in Mumbai. Professor Ramesh's interests include citizens' rights and their implementation in India, India's political system, and Western political thought. We'll be discussing two of her EPW articles, and I recommend reading them. I've shared links to both in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us, Abhinaya. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
So, for your EPW article titled Dalit Women, Vulnerabilities and Feminist Consciousness, you cover several different sectors, including manual scavenging, human trafficking, prostitution or sex work, caste-based atrocities, and institutional humiliation and violence. Could you tell us about this article and your research process?
Because I was working on this theme of violence against Dalit women in India, and my supervisor in Lancaster University, Professor Sylvia Walby, when she told me that you need to go for the elaborate understanding of the situation of Dalit women and violence against them, then I found that there are two layers of their violence, like their subjugation. That one is like apparently which are visible, the direct violence by the caste-based patriarchy, and there are also a number of other things which are contributing. That family which is poor amidst the majority of the villagers and only lone house located, which created a trouble to them all the time. So these are all visible. Apparently, we can see that these are the direct, let us say, involvement of such processes against her, and that made her more vulnerable. But while doing the textual analysis, I realized that it's not only that, but there is something else which is happening, and that is under the garb of so-called upper caste, those who are enlightened, egalitarian, but they do have some processes of subordinating Dalit women. And that made me to go for this detailed analysis as far as the vulnerability. I developed this vulnerability model, and in that vulnerability, how they are co-complexing eventually for other women.
Yeah. And is there one sector that you'd like to tell us more about that was particularly important to you during your research?
I will not say one specific sector, but I would say that there is one tendency of the upper caste, as I said, so-called enlightened women, especially from NGO sector or intelligentsia. Whenever they do some good work, under the garb of good work, there are number of layers which are basically subordinating these women. I will give you one or two illustrations. If you see the organization called VAM, the name is also VAM, like something to do with Vesha and their transformation. But in that VAM organization, which is located in Samli, you will find that women are made to do the prostituting work. There is a continuation and the circumstances which are created by these NGO leaders that you continue to do the same work. They did not feel that there is a possibility of making them to give education and taking them out of that prostitution. So my question to that organization is this, that don't you really have the dream of closing of that prostituting system and making these women to come in the mainstream and do better work, what Ambedkarian and Fulavian ideology of making an individual as an autonomous being. So here you will find that they are consistently, this is one illustration, that they made the system like that the women those will go for the prostitution will have their children raised by crash and have the education. So they continue the prostitution and children will also have their education. So these are basically that helps the system to continue rather than have a closure. And that was in my mind a very very deep seated structure which our modern society tries to create for these women. That is the intention, the innate intention of such a patterns of NGOization and NGO leaders to continue the system and not to end the system.
You already touched on the Phule Ambedkarite perspective on this type of work, and I'd like to know more about how this lens can be applied to this context.
I can specifically say about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. When his satyagraha and all these mochas which were going on as a part of social movement to create awakening among the deprived sections, people in India, at that time he had a meeting in Kamatipura, which is a red light area in Mumbai. So there are some of the women, because he was also gathering the public, money for a number of social commitment and social cause. So at that time, those women said that we also would like to give some funding from us. It's Baba Sahib who said that no, I don't want this funding from you, which is basically out of your such exploitation. So that is a very crystal clear argument and thought which he had about this area, that okay, you cannot give me that funding because it is out of exploitation. So he was very clear about sexual labor, that he never wanted these women and anybody should go for sexual labor. But consistently, you will find that we try to borrow the concept of willing sexual labor of the Western people, where you have a massive democratic freedom that you can do anything as far as it is convinced by yourself. That is willing prostitution. But these women, those who are working for the NGO, they bring those willing prostitution concept under the guise of sexual labor, and they make these women to go for the sexual work. But I feel that there are two sort of sexual labor. One is willing, and another one is forced or coercive. So the caste-based prostitution which is going on there in this country is basically a forced sexual labor. Okay, you cannot attach that with these women are not aware about it. What is this sexual labor or it is exploitation? So I think that borrowing the concept from the Western world as it is and trying to fix for their convenience, the convenience of the elite class of the society, has consistently remained a pattern of behavior with the
Right. Yeah. And I think that
yeah.
that makes sense about the fact that this is that you're viewing this as an imposition on women from
Yes, on
marginalized
this
classes.
women.
So I wanted to also transition to a much broader theme that extends, beyond your article. So in 2017, you gave a lecture about Dr.
Mhm.
Ambedkar's contribution to women's empowerment at Nagpur University. Could we know a few highlights from your talk?
I would say it was a central point of his ideology, and it was encompassing the entire egalitarian perception of the Western modernist egalitarian formulations, that how women need to have the emancipation, and Hindu Code Bill was the outcome of this perception, which was not accepted by, in the initial phase of our democratic formation, but eventually in section wise within one of the years it was accepted by the parliament. Point which I would like to say, that what he did, that the Hindu law, Hindu Code Bill, which consists of the Hindu law. In Hindu law, you have two sections of Hindu law, that is Dayabhaga and Mitakshara. Now, in Dayabhaga, there is a liberty, or there are some locations where you will find that the women have the voice and the choice, especially about the inheritance of property. But when we had the Dayabhaga, where you had the inheritance of the property, you have more sati, let us say, aspects involved in that as a customary practice of women to follow a funeral pyre of her husband after his death. And that was, at one level you had right, but that right was having the consequence of such customary practice. Whereas Mitakshara did not have. Rest of the, I mean, the entire country had Mitakshara, and West Bengal and Assam, they had Dayabhaga. So you have right in these locations, but you also have that right, and so more, sati processes, because you don't want that woman to participate in the property of a husband, so she needs to get wiped out. So what he did this democratization of Dayabhaga and Mitakshara and making it applicable into the entire territory of India, and that is a massive change in Hindu law. At the same time, he did not say only about the husband's property, but the lady will also get the property of her father, okay, share in the father, and a very prominent aspect of her survival, because those were the days women never had education and did not have, that earning as a work, I mean, pay out of the work, okay. So they were completely dependent on family members. So she also had Sridhar, and the Sridhar was like that you have, the gifts which are acquired or received at the time of the marriage and number of ceremonies in the house to her specifically. and that used to be used by the husband and his people. So that Sridhan was outrightly for her, and Baba Saheb tried to bring these three locations of her empowerment, that making the Daya Baba to entire this thing, and then addition of her father's property and also her Sridhan. So if something goes wrong with her or with her husband, she can have this substantial locations where she can survive on her own without having any reliance on anyone else. So this is one thing, and very prominently he made it into a number of locations that how it will be acquired in the Succession and Property Inheritance Act. At the same time, you will find that polygamy, which was considered to be the very problematic in human practice in our society, which he stopped. Okay, and then there was aspects that she has more locations where she can go for the divorce. At the same time, in labor laws, being a person one who is from the subordinated sections of the society, but 50% of the society, where he also has in labor laws number of provisions, and those provisions are like for you know like if a woman is working in the coal mines, a pregnant woman is not allowed because she is pregnant and she needs to have a number of you will find contours which he has given a clear thought in Hindu Code Bill and the ordinary laws which are also under the Constitution of India under the fundamental rights, that what she how she will get enabled and safeguarded through all these locations. Okay, family law, then inheritance and succession of property. Then you also have this labor law where she comes under the subordinated section. So she will have this, social justice as a very valuable concept which he has used time and again, not only about women but also all deprived and especially working class in the labor laws. Okay. But unfortunately, I have a comment on this that these are all the laws which are applicable in public sector where women who are from the upper caste and upper class they are utilizing, and these women from the deprived sections such as Dalit, OBC, and Adivasi are from the unorganized sector, and in unorganized sector, 80% women are from these sections. So all these laws and provisions and his intellectual capacities are being used by the public sector women. And I would say that all these women are real beneficiaries of Ambedkar thought and his articulation and his comprehension, which he did for women in India. That's a sad part of the story.
Yeah. I think it also was important that the changes that he brought, like the inheritance changes that you've spoken about, have like structural changes that you have the
Hmm.
effects of generationals. But as you also importantly, highlight that this is benefiting upper caste women, and that's
Yes,
the part that needs to be recognized. Uh,
which he did not expect. Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And just to focus in on that aspect some more, you've also mentioned in your article that that while upper caste feminists have, quote, articulated the concerns of upper caste and class women as the problems of all women, they have exhibited apathy towards various struggles against atrocities on Dalit women. In the aftermath of the Khailanji massacre, the silence exhibited by non-Dalit women was glaringly conspicuous, end quote. And you also add that importantly, in quote, many instances of violence against Dalit women have witnessed active participation of upper caste and class women to instigate their men, such as Khailanji, end quote. Could we start by understanding the role of upper caste women in sustaining, what you call the caste-based public patriarchy? And we know that has written about Dr. Ambedkar has written about the practice of endogamy in upholding the caste system. So I was curious about what also Dr. Ambedkar viewed as the role of upper caste women, if at all he wrote about that.
In India, we also have 1970, a very important aspect. Like we had a report from the United Nations, report, to reflect to the United Nations questions about the subordination of women in India, and we had towards equality report. So in this towards equality report, we came to know real fact, a factual knowledge about how women are subordinated in India. And that was also the era where you will find that Mathura rape case happened in case of Maharashtra. And afterwards, that started reflecting in Mumbai the articulation of Sri Mukti Sangatana and all of the things. But my point, which I'm trying to tell you, that from then onwards, rape case, which is basically defined and articulated conceptual framework which took place in American feminist ideas. That is what the entire world, or specifically, I would say that we are also using that definition against our will, without our consent, right? So this conceptual framework became very important, though we did not accept it initially. The entire onus of proving of rape was on women. Later on in 19, I think 75 and in 80, it turned that the onus of proving the rape on a man, one who is responsible for such atrocious behavior. So what happened that from 1970, women studies formulated because of this report towards equality, and this became a specialized knowledge production for women. But consistently, as I said, that these women, those who are in the women studies, made a point of working only on the themes of upper caste women and their subordination. They did not take care of the section and majority women and massive subordination. You know, in United Nations, if you have the massive subordination or torture, that becomes a priority rule in jurisprudence, right? But then here in India, that the dowry and middle class oriented, things which were going on, taken very seriously by these women, but completely blindfolded perception towards subordination and subjugation, which these women are facing. And at the moment, you know that there are 10 rape cases are happening in case of Dalit women in India every day. Okay, so you can imagine what happened because they did not pay attention on these women. My point is this: that from 1970 till this point, whenever we talk about Dalit women, always speaking, upper caste women will always speak, and that's a lie which is going on for last 70 years. That Dalit women face more problematic situation from their own main, that is Dalit patriarchy. Okay, that became so much focused out of blue. They have focused it in such a manner that they said that okay, they are subordinated by their own men. And another thing is that if Dalit men are talking about the emancipation of the entire Dalit community, why are they not paying attention toward their women? My point is this: that Dalit women, and especially the Dalit Panther, was a context when it happened in Maharashtra, in Mumbai. So that was very much vibrant organization, though it did not short-lived, did not go beyond 2.5 years. But they did have universality in their articulation, that it's not only for Dalit women, whoever is subordinated will have okay the perception of emancipation. But that was sidelined and fixed to these women that they are not doing well. But rape, molestation, everyday's continuum of subjugation in village, in cities, because in village she has to have the dependence on the upper caste landlords because they are working in their farms and they had to go for this negotiation, and under that they had to become victim of rape, molestation, and some such inhuman behavior patterns of the so-called upper caste. So these were not for the analysis in their women studies. The analysis was completely shifted to her individual domain, that her man is responsible for her subordination. I fully agree that there is no I also have a context of Gail Omwet when she said that the subordination of the Dalit man is basically when he started taking education and imitating upper caste man's behavior with his wife, and they started behaving like this with their men. Otherwise, 70 years before, both Dalit man and woman, they were co-worker. This is the word of Gail Omwet, that they were co-worker in the field and they were made for each other in the same place to look after, because both of them were subordinated by heinous caste practices, okay, as untouchable. So I would say that, and we also have the Dalit history that women are not much subordinated. On the contrary, they were much understood by their own families. So I also would say that by these upper caste women and their articulations saying consistently that the Dalit man is a very important center point for her subordination is basically, like making her lonely within the house if she face some sort of, subordination of caste-based public patriarchy. So by saying this, because most of these educated Dalit women, though they are in minuscule minority, so they cannot have influence on the rest of the Dalit women, but they are, such as you will find that Dalit biographies, they are consistently talking how their man was subordinated. They do talk about the caste system, but the focus is more on man. So upper caste women are successful with these illustrations that see Urmila Pawar, see other women from the Dalit community, how their men are subordinate and not caste-based public patriarchy. So this is nothing but shifting the attention of the most heinous crimes to the domain of home. Okay, that is a lie produced by the knowledge production uh, in our society from last 70 years, which has not happened anywhere in the world.
And during this time, that we were speaking about earlier, it wasn't that Dalit women were not collectivizing and responding in their own ways. In another article, you've written about how Dalit women built their own autonomous movements in the aftermath of the Khailanji massacre and during the Chalo Nagpur campaign in 2017 that marked Savitri Bai Phule's 110th Remembrance Day. I wanted to know more about this process of how Dalit women built their autonomous movements in the aftermath of.
As Gopal Guru has said in 1992 article, Dalit women speak differently. Okay. Uh, I would say that till 1990, that there were some of the organizations, independent autonomous organizations based in Mumbai, based in Nagpur. In that they realized that these women are not taking or highlighting our issues now. Rape, molestation, and subordination of Dalit women was also those days, but media was not that active. As a result, you will find that reported cases, unreported cases was a big issue. Now also we have. But you will find that from 1992 onwards, Dalit women started speaking differently. And from 2006, after the Khailanji case, we have altogether different domain. But I would say that you see, even in 1992, the clashes and the bomb blast, and also the, what is that, after the collapse of the Babri Masjid, the articulations from women to resist and protest started taking place in Mumbai. I have seen in Santa Cruz area, and also the 1997 context of the, this Ghatkopar shootout at Dalit Basti and killing of 12 people from Dalit community randomly by army officer. Okay, and there was no reason. So at that time, you will find Dalit women not having any leadership, but they were more on the streets for the protest. So they are always there, and you see so many photographs and so many articulations of Baba Sahib's, those social movement which he was doing, all protest movements, whether it is Chaudhar tank in Mahad or in Mumbai or number of other locations where he did. Dalit women are always actively involved in those process, and they never had that crisis that they wanted to have the leadership. Okay. And Baba Sahib also did not frame something different to women. Like, the present political parties, you always have Mahila group in the same party, mainstream parties. So Baba Sahib never felt that because Dalit culture is not like considering women as something different. They are always with the family. On the contrary, you see in 16th century saintly expressions by Saint Sukhamira, one who was from the Mahar community, and his wife. Wife is asking more pertinent questions than Sukhamira, that is Soirabai. And Soirabai was consistently asking that why are you doing all these things to this community from the upper caste when they don't give you any response or any respect. So she's more articulate and more direct and more philosophical. In our household, I'm not talking about anything else, but I come from the coastal region of Thane district, and especially from Bhiwandi. We don't have segregation of women and separately dealing with women. We all have collective, I would say, cultural upbringing of man and woman in the family. Maybe Thane district is much more influenced by the tribal, culture. So we are very much at ease with each other, and nobody is superior, nobody is subordinate. So Dalit women normally raised in the house on equal footings, that I would say. But that does not mean inculcating this patriarchal concept of the upper caste and upper class so-called civilization on them. Because another aspect I would say that they have always lived in Gaon Kusa Bahir, means what? They were not in the village. They're always outside the village. So that village culture of subordination did not get reflected on these women. As a result, you will find that the we are slightly close to the tribal culture because tribals were also egalitarian along with their men and women. Okay, so that is the point which I would like
Mhm,
to
mhm,
say
mhm.
here.
And along with several other scholars, you've also, tried to develop this Dalit feminist consciousness, and you've underscored the importance of Phule Ambedkarian critical perspectives. So I
Yes.
was curious about and you've spoken, you've given talks also earlier. I noticed on Savitri Bai and Jyotirao Phule. So I was interested in knowing the kind of impact that both of these thinkers and actors have had on Dr. Ambedkar, and the process of formulating and building this critical perspective over the years.
Oh, yeah. Fully ideology has always become a very fundamental aspect of Ambedkarian ideology. That his study was from the Scottish High School in Pune, and in Scottish High School he first critiqued Bible, okay, Christianity. So you can say that Western education gives you this and also gives criticality. As a result, you will find that Fully was a perfect person, one who went in that school but did not have influence of Christianity. On the contrary, he started critiquing, and that critical perception of his life became a very important domain. That not to take anything as it is, but have the critical age towards that existing knowledge, and that is how he wrote all his articles and books, and on number of occasions he was trying to give some of the articulations which are outrightly different as far as his contemporary era is concerned. I would say it's also became a part of my articulation that the way we had Plato in Western civilization, we also have dialogical knowledge production system of Buddha over here. So I would say that simultaneously the Eastern knowledge production, which we call it now as Oriental and Occidental, both are going on hand in hand. Could be human civilizations were developing on equal footings. So the way in 1848 people were started talking about the rights of women in Western world, that is in America. Here Fule was same year 1848 he started opening school for girls. So you will find that modernist approach which was developing in both the east and west simultaneously, and that I feel a very very great aspect, and that influenced Baba Sahib very much. Buddha's egalitarian and scientific perception towards man's life and rationality. Whatever he says, he doesn't say without substantiation, and that is outrightly Buddha Charvaka traditions. Buddha never allowed anything giving in a sermon form, but Buddha is basically following the dialogue between his younger pupils, those who were there in the monasteries. So here you will find that taking also the opinion of other individual in an equal footing was considered to be the philosophy, and that reflects in Fulevian ideology, that reflects in Ambedkarian ideology, which is, I would say, a massively Western oriented knowledge production, that they don't say anything just because they say or they felt it that way. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was also important that you've highlighted the impact that the Fules have had on Dr. Ambedkar's emphasis on reason and the need to be have humility and be critical of the theories and knowledge that one is given with, and how that impacts representations of and concern about like sexual violence today. And as a professor trained in law and human rights, you've written about the quote specificity of subjugation suffered by Dalit women should reflect in the provisions of laws, family, civil, and criminal, as well as those related to atrocities. End quote. So I was curious about the role that you see that law can play in addressing the violence and humiliation of Dalit women, particularly maybe your own perspectives and Dr. Ambedkar's perspectives about this.
My contention is that in each and every law, when it is committed on a woman, and if the woman is from that particular location of the Dalit community or deprived section, one who never had anybody to fall back as far as their subordination is concerned, they should always go for saying that okay, the person is from this specific sector, so she is more impacted, and so she is more vulnerable. My vulnerable model is what, that because she is from that vulnerable section, whatever she feels like fighting on her own, a lone individual cannot fight. They do have this kind of articulation that they were fighting for themselves alone. You see the Surekha Bhutmangi, the only village girl, one who was consistently fighting against the villagers, those who were trying to subordinate her or trying to take her property. But here you will find that all these laws are not having nowhere caste specificity, and that is also that what happened after Nirbhaya case. What we say in feminist theory that the men along with the mentioned women, others are add-on category. Now, Dalit, Adivasi, and OBC women have always remained as add-on category in case of India. And this add-on category means what? That they are also when their subordination, their violence against them is so massive. Okay, so massivity is completely ignored and given more priority to the subordination of the privileged section women of the society. So I would say that in these laws there has to be a provision about a caste. Okay, because if she is from that specific caste, she is going to face number of subordinations because she is from that location, and people know. I have developed also one theoretical formulation that there is a social safeguarding from upper caste women, and there is social vulnerability or exploitation and violence against Dalit women. That in public domain, when someone knows that a lady is from the Brahmin community, people will not dare to attack her. But when they come to know that a person is from the lower caste, okay, you can take a chance. So this kind of perception which the patriarchy has in their mind is because of the caste system, right? In Verma report, I would say that initially when it was published, it published only 10 points program of Verma report. In that, nowhere you will find the caste location. But if you see now the report, the caste is considered to be an add-on category. So I would say that it's not only the India. There has to be something like if you have to control of the subordination and violence against Dalit women in India, we have to have some assistance and help from the other countries' women, and they are ready to do that. Okay, and that I would say comes under a very important concept formulated by Floya Ewell Davis, that is transversal politics. Okay, for women's coalitions and women's, let us say, development of their articulation. That if the women of the upper caste are unable to offer justice to the, and they don't want, it's not that they cannot, they can, but they don't want the apathy towards them, which we have seen with number of evidences in articulation of 70 years women studies, let us say, works, where you will not find that a Dalit woman became center point of their analytical category. But there are women, those who want to work for this from abroad, and I think that we should reach to them and they will reach to us for sisterhood, because internal sisterhood is completely influenced by the caste behavior.
Right. Yeah, I think the aspect of add-on category just really shines in a lot of different places where it just becomes like, okay, at the last minute, just add on a specific speaker or a specific article on that focuses on Dalit women for the sake of like a token kind of representation, if at all. So the last question that I wanted to ask you before we head to the quick rapid fire round is about some of the unanswered questions that you hope to investigate in your future research on Dr. Ambedkar or women's empowerment and Dalit feminisms, any of these areas.
It's not unanswered questions, but I would say that I know by now what went wrong, what happened, how knowledge produced about the women with add-on category and the concept of incommensurability, that okay, they are different, we are different, and so we will not have that. My worry at this particular juncture of India's Dalit women is this, that the new generation, those who are working in a very established structures, you have the example of IIT, but apart from IIT, you have TISS, you have also IIT's social science oriented perception, and the institutions where Dalit women, those who go for knowledge production and doing their PhD and research work, they are completely under the subordination of their supervisors, those who are from the upper caste. And these Dalit women are speaking the language of their supervisors. What I mean here, that they speak the language of the language of their supervisor means, I'll give you one example that recently there was a talk by one young person, one who is from the IIT Delhi, and speaking under the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, that sort of thing, webinar was there. And while saying that the issue was about violence against Dalit women, so it was very close to my research, so I had a point of attending. And then I realized that she started saying that, the great leaders like Rosa Luxemburg and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, I realized that I have developed so far the concept of Brahminical surveillance, that our knowledge is produced under the Brahminical surveillance, though I have not written it elaborately, but I'm under the process of writing on this, that how we are all under the surveillance, the way I said about caste nepotism. So we are all under the surveillance of Brahminical perception about the knowledge production, how to ignore somebody when he is very, very important and all, etc. So she said first about Rosa Luxemburg because she was giving lecture under the Rosa Luxemburg system. Now this is a complete international subordination, I would say, is shifting my surveillance of Brahminical surveillance towards international surveillance. Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung would not expect such thing, but what has happened last 50 years? Women from upper caste, diaspora I'm talking about, and women from lower caste also, those who imitate diaspora, they carry all these subordinating perceptions and locations over there, and as if they're teaching. I know that they also have the surveillance, and that's the reason the surveillance established by Michel Foucault and also Jeremy Bentham in 18th century. But I would say that these women are under their surveillance, so they are teaching how to, uh, surveil upon to the Westerners, which is a basic flaw. And as a result, you will find that Westerners are also received the knowledge that how in India these are the practices. Though they are very rational, they don't give much attention to such things. But I would say that new generation, without having depth of the knowledge, reading anything about anything, and they speak and they articulate, which is absolutely irrational and let us say without emancipatory practices. This is my take on the contemporary Dalit articulations that you last 20 years that you try to write which will appeal and appease upper caste elite class. And there is a failure of knowledge production for emancipation and for social transformation, which was a forte of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and Pulavian ideology. Okay, so these guys are producing the knowledge on the diktat of the upper caste because publication has become another domain of domination, that we will publish only that which you will critique your own community, and keeping aside the culprit section of the society, those who are responsible for the entire damage, a civilizational conspiracy against the Dalit, Adivasi, and OBC community of these countries, okay, and other minorities, religious or cultural. Okay, so what I'm trying to say that my area is take, as I told you that I also have engagement with to understand Plato over there, Aristotle over there, 1848 American Seneca Falls proposal, and 1848 Pulavian understanding of school for girls. So these are my consistent understanding, but very focused and very much required is how to have the emancipation of Dalit women.
Yes, and to transition to the rapid fire round, where we have just three questions, where we would like brief responses. So, quick questions and quick responses, just to get your like initial and brief thoughts. So, what is one aspect of Dr. Ambedkar's writing and actions that you would like to learn more about?
I would like to learn about his constitutional morality. Uh, what he takes it from the, since I'm from political science, I would like to take a grip of this idea of constitutional morality. Yeah.
And what is one thing that you're skeptical about in Dr. Ambedkar's work?
I don't have skepticism about his work because he's a very vibrant person and did not care because you see his one small video of BBC where there itself you come to know that how straightforward he was. And I would like to become straightforward because one who becomes straightforward doesn't care for what mileage if you get, that is a very bad thing with Dalit, those who are in the elite class. They have become status quoist to that for some, interest, vested interest of their personal or otherwise. They keep aside sensibility and do something for others' favor. That that Baba said never did. So I said that I'm not skeptical about his everything, but I would like to become like him.
What is one recommendation that you have to further and unify fragmented social movements?
I would say that we all have to nurture the encompassing practices which we don't have. Our every festival is different for different communities. When only in the at the time of the politics we have that collective agenda. So that should not happen. I would say that collective principles of humanitarian level or that emancipatory level should take place. And education is a first parameter, I would say, which teaches that.
I just want to thank you a lot for joining us on Research Radio. We covered a lot of ground, and I think we got a chance to go really deep in a lot of topics. So thank you, Professor Abhinaya Ramesh.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation with Abhinaya Ramesh and consider exploring her articles for more insights. Research Radio will be back with a new episode on Wednesday as part of our new series that explores multiple dimensions of Dr. Ambedkar's thought and practice one week after another. Take care.